I'm just thankful you guys can't smell me. So, yesterday, we thought we'd do something fun, inspired by a, if I recall, fairly clean, wholesome-ish kid movie, Yes Day. Told the kids they could have a yes day from noon till bedtime. Mommy and Daddy would do whatever they said. We can't say no. We let down a few logical ground rules of safety and, not exploding anything, but for the most part. So this morning I was thinking today can be Nicole's yes day. So I went working out with my wife. I made it back alive. Barely. But I'm drenched in sweat. So there you go. Okay. I could see if there wasn't so much liquid in my eyes. All right. So, hey everybody, how's it going? We're going to start Matthew 21 in verse 12. Now, verse 12 starts with then. Then. And I'm going to pause real quick and just say, you all there? Everyone saying hi? I have no comments, and that's very unusual, but I think it's just a Facebook glitch. Facebook does that. If you're watching later, it's a moot point. But I assume you're all there. So, then, if we read John chapter 2, verses 13 to 22, we realize this is the second time that Jesus cleanses the temple. It's funny how you would think, right? You would think that after the first time, him coming in, braiding a whip, kicking over tables, telling everyone, my father's house was supposed to be a house of prayer, but you've made it into a den of thieves, right? I mean, it says right here, Jesus went into the temple of God, drove out all those who bought and sold in the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he said to him, it is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. You would think that they never would have come back after that, right? I mean, you think after Jesus comes in and turns over the tables, that would be the end. Isn't it funny? Not really funny, but there's an irony that Jesus comes back and lo and behold, the money changers are back. The sellers of the sheep and all these other things, they're all back. The buying, selling, and this whole sinful real thing. And I always assume that people know, right? But just to make sure that we're all on the same page, right? The money changers, these people, it speaks in the Old Testament. I don't actually have the verses off the top of my head, probably in Leviticus, where if you can't, it just doesn't make sense to take a cow, a bull, all the way from Dan in the north, Naphtali, all the way down to Jerusalem. That'd be a hard thing to transport all these animals. And so if you had a sacrifice, you could sell it, and then you could bring the money and purchase one there. Either way, whether you showed up with your own lamb or you showed up with money, what would happen is if you showed up with your own lamb, it had to be inspected. And if by chance it doesn't pass the inspection, well, then you need to go purchase an approved lamb. And maybe if you just showed up with money, but either way, you're now showing up with the approved lamb. So you go and you sell your lamb and you get $50 for it. Okay, $50. Let's go buy a lamb with my $50. And they tell you, well, I'm sorry, we don't take your kind of money here. So, okay, what do I do? Well, you go over to the money changer and you exchange your icky Roman denarii and you get some temple coins. Fair enough, temple coins. All right, well, here's my $50. They go, and here's your 20 temple coins. 20? They're like, yeah, 20, here you go. And then you take your 20 temple coins and you go and say, okay, I'm here to buy the lamb. They're like, well, a lamb is 80 temple coins. You're like, what? And the idea was there was a racket going on, and the priests were behind it. And they were getting a cut of everything. They were ripping people off by denying their animals. They were ripping people off by exchanging their money at a horrendous rate. They were ripping people off by selling the lambs, the approved lambs, for way too much. This whole system was going on, and Jesus found it detestable. Needless to say, any act of, well, it's not really simony. Simony is a term named after Simon the sorcerer from the book of Acts, chapter 8, where you pay money for religious favor. And it kind of works that way, I guess, but instead of like a rich person trying to buy favor, it's the church really raking the people over. And that's hated by God. The idea that a church would take advantage of people for their money. Wicked. That you look in the Old Testament, what was it, a Tetzel and the selling of indulgences back in Luther's time, right? I mean, that was a big thing, was they would tell people that you can pay this much money and you can have time taken off of purgatory, which is a joke in and of itself. But the point was that the idea that you can really abuse people who are coming to seek God and you can take their money from them. And yeah, that's done in a lot of ways. And Jesus doesn't like it. Now, those are obvious things. We explained what was going on. We explained how even today this principle of fleecing the flock of God, trying to get money out of people, which doesn't contradict the idea that the Bible does talk about us giving and giving generously and giving to the church. That's all biblical. It's really just about the leaders manipulating to make that happen. That's the problem. But back up to the very first thing that hit me, and I decided to take a detour with some technicalities first. Jesus' first year of ministry, John chapter 2, he goes to the temple and he cleans house. On the Passion Week, he goes back and finds all the same things there, and he has to clean house again. It might shock, I don't know, does it shock you? Post it in the comments. I mean, honestly, right? I mean, if Jesus came in, braided a whip, was whipping people, kicking over the tables, right? The fact that they would come back and set up shop again. To me, it seems mind-boggling, but maybe not. Because Jesus went back off to Galilee, right? And he wasn't around. And I mean, after a while, it seemed like the coast is clear and they set shop up again. And maybe it's just a reminder for you that it should not be a strange thing. Like Peter talks about, why do you count it a strange thing, this fiery trial that you're going through? It's like, why are you surprised you're going through a fiery trial? Might I say similarly, why are you surprised that you find yourself struggling with the same sins that you struggled with years ago? And maybe Jesus gave you a deliverance where you had a season of freedom, but over time, quite often, it's a period of time where Jesus isn't around. You have victory over something. You feel empowered. You feel free. And then you feel lax. Maybe you're not fighting as hard. Maybe you're not as hungry as you once were for the freedom. And so you slip back into old ways. Like God was going good. Things were on fire. I'm going to be honest with you guys. You know, there's always this fear that, like, as a pastor, you're going to make people think that you're trying to manipulate them or that you're trying to guilt trip them. And it's like, well, no, I'm just trying to tell you what I think the honest truth is. And if people feel guilty, I'm sorry. But honestly, I see people on fire, and quite often those people are hungry for fellowship. They're the ones making it to 2-3 services a week because they're excited about Jesus and they just want to be where the action is and they want to be with their brothers and sisters and they're excited about what's going on. And then logical, reasonable things come up. And the pattern is broken and they're not in sin. They're not bad Christians because they stopped going to the midweek service. They stopped going to the night service. They don't make it to as many morning services. They've gone from in-person to online. And yet, there is a drifting. And next thing they know, the drifting happens. Jesus isn't around as much as he once was, it seems like. And all of a sudden, someone sets up a little money changing table right there in the temple of their hearts. Then a little sheep exchange. And the next thing they realize, the temple of the Holy Spirit, the naos, as Paul puts it, that's the Holy of Holies, of which we are supposed to be, the temple of the Holy Spirit. All of a sudden, the temple is once again filled with garbage because we allowed Jesus to get a little bit distant, just enough that we didn't feel his presence so strongly to where the presence of these idols, or maybe IDLE, the idols, because that's a problem too, we allow those things to come back in. Jesus had to clean the temple more than once. Highly likely he's going to have to clean your temple more than once. You're going to stand before God spotless. The temple was holy, right? You tell me. Isn't that a beautiful application? I love when the Holy Spirit gives a nugget. Was the temple itself less holy because of the money changers? Were any of these unholy people able to degrade the value of God's temple? No. The temple was holy no matter what happened. It was declared holy by God, just like you if you're a believer. You're declared holy by God no matter what's going on inside. But all the more reason why we ought to make it practically what it is declared positionally, using our fancy terms. So, closing on an old saying that's a fun one, right? Jesus has freed you. If you're a believer, right, which most of you who watch are, if you're a believer, he has freed you from the penalties of sin once and for all. He is working on in you to will and do to his good pleasure, right? He's freeing you from the power of sin. You've already been freed from the penalty, but he wants to free you from the power of sin in your life. And one day, that blessed day, when he comes or calls us home, he will free you from the presence of sin, where it'll be no more a factor in your life. But don't be surprised if Jesus needs to come. He might even need to braid a whip to clean house again in your life. So there you guys go. Remember, happy, holy, and healthy Christians, you often find them gathering with one another. Pray about it if something has pulled you away from that. Because again, the more we get pulled away, even a little bit more distant, there's an effect. And there is an effect of being amongst people, praying for one another, laying hands on one another, sharing and opening up. There's an effect there too. So God bless you guys. Have an amazing day. Today's Friday, and I won't see you tomorrow. Right, I won't see you tomorrow. So see you guys on Monday.